NRL Fantasy Round 3 is done and dusted, and it was one of the craziest rounds in recent history. Nathan Cleary went down, and a bunch of other guys popped off or sort of fell off a cliff too. Welcome back, guys. I'm Longy here with Jay-Z, and we're going to be talking about the big questions for this round and talking about how we're thinking heading into this week. So a bit of a new segment, a bit higher level, more strategic. Keen to get into it. How you feeling, Jay-Z?
Mate, it was a pretty crushing week for me. 10 minutes into the round, my captain goes down with 5 points. It's not a great start. Luckily, the rest of my team's pretty good. I just snuck under 800, and it was looking pretty grim at the start of the week. But there are positive signs to take out of the week, I guess.
Yeah, mate, a lot of people copped that Nathan Cleary captaincy. He was still the most captained when you look at the data, but a lot of people did jump to Haas as well. I went to May myself, so somewhere in the middle. I was happy enough with his score, but Payne Haas is just unstoppable. Look, in terms of today, we're going to cover a few things. So we'll talk about Nathan Cleary, whether to hold him. Talk about the targeting of guys who've gotten a bit cheaper. So Reece Walsh, Isaiah Yeo, Dave Feeder, even Harry Grant as well there. Talking about Payne Haas, do we have to captain him every week? And then going through some mid-ranges and whether you should hold on to these guys. So is Gilbert worth holding on to? Is Metcalf worth persisting with? Iongi, Seyfarth, all these types of guys, as well as Connor Watson at the end too. So first up, Nathan Cleary, 779K, priced at a 58 now. So very cheap. I think we're on the same page here, but what are you doing with Nathan Cleary here, Jay-Z?
It just doesn't really make any sense to do anything other than hold him. Obviously, he hasn't started the season on fire. He tends to actually start the season pretty slowly generally, but he's a guy that can come out and score 90s like in back-to-back weeks pretty easily. The run of fixtures isn't all that difficult. He was on for a big score against Melbourne, if I do say so. 5 points
In
at
8 minutes.
7 minutes. But no, he's also lost a lot of money, which yeah, his break even's high at 100, but he can absolutely hit that. And
Yep.
you're trading out the best player in fantasy. Knock knock. If he comes back and starts beating Haas.
I'm with you, dude. Break evens are one of the most overrated stats in fantasy. Like I get that they're important, making losing cash and all that. But a guy like Nathan Cleary, you're gonna want him back anyway. And if you sell him now, you're committing to not having him for a long time because you look at this fixture run. You got out this week, then you have a run of Cowboys, Dolphins, Roosters, Manly, Brisbane, North Queensland. That's all pretty, playable matches. I mean, most teams in the comp are playable for Cleary, right? But they're all playable matchups. And then you go round 11 as a bye, and round 12 will probably be out for State of Origin anyway. So you sort of have him for this window of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, right, before Origin. And you can rethink it at Origin time, and hopefully he's made his money back by then. So if you sell Cleary right now, you're stuck without Cleary basically until after the Origin period. It's a long period of time because you're not gonna sell him, right? Watch him lose cash for 1 or 2 weeks, then buy him back for a 4-week window, then sell him again before Origin. So I just look at this and think it makes no sense at all to sell him. The other thing is if you said to me, earlier in the season, hey, you can have Nathan Cleary priced at 58 points. The only cost is you have to wait 1 week for him. I would do that 100%. Like that is a massive discount. I still pencil him in for about a 70 average if you take out that injury game, of course. So I think he's serious value at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really we're in a round that's going to be very tricky in the first place.
Yeah.
We don't know what team lists are going to look like yet, but some of the rookies might get dropped. Like the Roosters just lost to the Warriors. Canberra got absolutely belted by Manly. So maybe there's a question mark over Tamale. Hopewadi's hanging around in that 18th man spot. We've already lost Lucas. Knights, Marzu and Ponga both on a bye. Hubner's still suspended. There's just a lot of uncertainty coming into this round. And so trading out a guy that for a fact is only going to miss 1 week and is an elite fantasy scorer, if not the best scorer in the whole league,
Yep.
it just seems like a raging mistake to me.
I'd say too, the game before last, his running game was on fire. So 120 meters plus run, 5 tackle breaks, doing all the kicking as well. Like the stats were about to come. And I actually might have had him as captain as well, like you. But I saw the report it was raining in Melbourne and thought, you know what, that's enough for me to jump off. But yeah, he'll come back and hopefully against North Queensland he comes out and scores 100 plus and burns everyone who sells him because we deserve the points, if I do say so myself. Now, next group here, targeting fallen stars. So one of the best skills in fantasy in my mind is looking at a guy who's out of form, dropping cash, and looking at that drop cash tab in fantasy as well and picking up someone who's going to bounce back. And in previous years, we've had a bunch of guys fill this criteria. So guys like Scotty Drinkwater has been on this list basically every year. Ruben Garrick normally gets down to about 500K at some point. You know, we've seen Alex Johnston pop up here every now and then. Normally not a big bounce back, but he comes back too. And this year we've got a group of guys. So Reece Walsh, Dave Fafita, Isaiah Yeo, Harry Grant, Dylan Brown, Ben Hunt have all dropped between about 50 and 130K. Now, I'll throw to you first, man, here. Like, looking at this group, is there someone in particular that jumps off the page for you as a buy for this week or future weeks?
I don't think any of them are buys this week. I know we just talked about break-evens not meaning anything, but Reece Walsh still has a pretty high break-even. So I'm happy to sort of wait at least a week. And I think the thing with him and even Harry Grant out of this list is you kind of want to see them getting close to what they're capable of. Like, I think a big danger sign for Harry Grant is that he ran the ball for like 5 meters against Penrith. Yep. And that's just like, Harry Grant doesn't do that. He's such a strong runner of the footy. He's really good at setting up his forwards and getting them onto the ball, and he just had no runs effectively against Penrith. Yep. Reece Walsh, another one who just has like amazing capability to bust out and score these like 80s and 90s. And you could almost say Brisbane are suffering with his form. I know they're 2-1, so they're not like truly suffering, but you would expect them to be putting the sword to teams like the Cowboys and winning like comfortably rather than close, grindy games. And that sort of comes down to his form. He's made a lot of errors these first 3 weeks. And once you start to see him getting back to his confident best, not making as many errors, you know, more line breaks, more attacking stats, more try involvements, I think that's when you start to look at him. Don't get me wrong, I think he's at 570K. He's still a very tempting buy, but I'd like to see at least one game where he's getting back to his attacking best before we start to look at guys like Walsh.
Interesting, yeah. I'll just throw a few things on those guys. So Harry Grant, more interesting if Jerome Hughes is out. Now, I haven't got confirmation on that, but if Hughes was out for sort of 3 to 6 weeks, that means that Harry Grant's going to have to sort of stop playing like Andrew McCullough and start running the ball. Then, you know, we got Reece Walsh here too. Like, Dolphins match up this week. Gatoni Staggs back as well. Maybe that opens things up a bit. I don't know, like with Walsh, right? So I'm with you. I'm not jumping on Walsh right now, but I don't need the wing fullback this week. There's a lot of coaches out there, though, who do need a wing fullback right now. I'll throw to you with a bit of a hypothetical. If you were looking for a wing fullback to buy this week, and let's say you didn't have money for Jaden Campbell, who's the obvious first choice, who would you be going for here? Because if it was like a Walsh versus Pappenhausen, for example, do you just cop the cash loss and, you know, go with the superior player, or are you jumping in a different direction?
I'd probably be more tempted on Pappenhausen. Melbourne have a really nice run of fixtures coming up, St George, and then I think they play South. And then they have another, and then the Warriors, and he's going to be goal kicking while Nick Meaney's out for the next 4 to 6 weeks. So there's a real window of opportunity with Pappenhausen where he could go on, he could score 60 points a week for the next couple of weeks, with the goal kicking adding to his floor. And Walsh just doesn't have that floor. Like, even if the Broncos come out and win all these games, if he's still making 5 errors a game like he did against the Cowboys, then it's going to be hard for him to get to the 50 plus scores you really want from him. Whereas we know Melbourne are going to come out and pretty much win every game. Even without Jerome Hughes, they've still got elite talents like Cameron Munster and even Tyron Wishart coming in, and Harry Grant, where Pappenhausen is sort of the focal point of their attack, where he gets into everything. The back rowers even set him up for tries. It's really impressive to watch the way they use him. So I would definitely be leaning Pappenhausen out of the two.
Yeah, that goal kicking is a massive boost. Obviously, confirmation of the broken jaw for Nick Meaney. It's an interesting toss-up because you could make or lose a lot of points with that, though. I don't think it's open and shut between the two of them. So the matchups for Walsh are fantastic too, but we'd see him score -2. And you've mentioned in the past, Pappenhausen's a guy who can ruck up and play 80 minutes of footy and score you 7 points. Look at last week, he had a try and a try assist, scored 36. So the base isn't strong with either of these guys, but most of the wing fullbacks aren't super base heavy. So yeah, I think a lot of it is just look at the fixtures and try to get a feel. You know, the goal kicking definitely skews it towards Paps, but Walsh could easily outscore him. A bunch of other guys here too. So look, Dave Fafita, super straightforward. He's lost 90K, but he's coming off the bench. So eventually he'll get the starting spot because he's the best back rower at the club, arguably. He's definitely one of the best 2 back rowers at the club. But he'll get into the starting side again. He'll be nice and cheap. Dylan Brown I'll speak on as well. Just hasn't looked good at all in a Parramatta side that hasn't looked good, but he's looked like one of the worst players in that team. So, just not super involved, not running the ball a ton, not as enthusiastic in defense, doesn't really kick the ball. So sort of leaves it to his halves partner, whether it's Volkman or Hawkins, to sort of steer the team around and play as a bit of a solo half. I don't see him bouncing back in a Parramatta jersey, and I'm hearing a few things about him having a sore knee, that kind of thing too. So that one feels like one that, unless he moves clubs mid-season on a loan or something like that, I just can't see him being worth considering.
Yeah, I think him and Ben Hunt are kind of in the same boat where it's like their role has almost changed. I know Dylan Brown's role hasn't necessarily changed, but he's playing in like a really, really bad side. Like the end of last year, he was sort of scoring like this as well. Even with Moses out, he was getting these sort of mid 30s to low to mid 40s. And until he gets back to his best, I don't think you can look at him. Like, it's another one where you need to see the form first. And until Moses is back, Parramatta look really bad. They really should have beaten the Bulldogs on the weekend. The amount of ball they had, and Dylan Brown's part of that problem, right? He didn't provide the points that someone like him should be. And I'm not going to say it has me worried as a Newcastle supporter, but it's certainly not it's not great viewing.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you guys were the one who won the bidding war against us there. So yeah. Ben Hunt, I will speak to this too. Not a lot of kick meters for him. So Adam Reynolds is shooting up with, I think it's a 67 average. Not a guy I'm chasing at all, by the way, Adam Reynolds. But Ben Hunt's playing that secondary role. He's kind of playing that creative 6 role without a consistent running game. So the base is quite low for him, but he will have a few pop games over the next month of footy. I'm certain of that. He'll have those big games, but his floor is so low that he can come out and score 20 points any given week as well. Bit of an Ezra Mam sort of scoring profile, a bit higher, but not heaps higher than that. And Isaiah Yo, down 67K, bit cheaper. Could be an option. Again, thinking about those that schedule for Cleary. So that round 11 bye, round 12 Origin, sort of a 6-week play, and then you can maybe hold him through the Origin period because we have an easier run of fixtures then. Is Yo someone you're targeting?
I think he has to be, right? Like there aren't a lot of screaming buys in the mids that people don't already own. Like we've got your Horsburghs, and like you should have Haas and May by now. I don't know outside of Yo if there are any other real elite guys you should be chasing. I mean,
Not your boy Couchman?
Couchman. Oh, that's a good shout.
It's your shout, man. You were on him preseason.
Yeah. Look, he's clearly become the top dog in that pack. There's still a bit of a question mark how they're going to use him this week. Now that David Clemmer's signed and he's back in the side, I'm pretty glad I have him. I think he's going to play somewhere between 50 and 60 every game, and maybe even some games go above that. And he's such a good PPM guy. He's just at a real awkward price. Like if you can find the money to trade him in, I don't hate it. But you almost need to be trading out someone like a Cleary for him, or a Watson, who I don't think either of which are sells at all. So I don't know how you'd try and sneak him in. But yeah, I guess Couchman and Yo are probably the only two mids that are screaming out as guys that you should be targeting. But there's no rush on guys like Yo. Obviously, he's an elite scorer. He might come in and average like 60 plus until the Origin period, which is really good, and then. But there are concerns over the way he scored. Like even in that game against Melbourne where he did a lot, he still only just managed 60.
Yeah, but that's his. All right, so if you look at him last year, 65 average across the year. That was a game where he didn't score a try, right? So you'd call his true average closer to 60. And it's 60 plus attacking stats every now and then, right? So that was pretty average performance from him. No Cleary next week as well. That could, like last year, that definitely boosted his scores. So maybe we see a bump up there. But yeah, I don't know. If it falls into your lap, I'm never against buying Isaiah Yo, especially at a discount. But personally, I'm leaning more towards Couchman than using money elsewhere. I've got a nice little spot where I'm about 200K in the bank as well. Before the additions, by the way. I know we've all got extra money. But there's a real 200K there, and then there's extra silly stuff. So I reckon I can go to Couchman, maybe from like someone like Iongi or whatever. And, I've already got cover in the wing fullback spot too, so I should be okay. But yeah, okay, interesting. So if you guys keep an eye out for, I think the Walsh and Pappenhausen conversation is going to be big this week, and I reckon one of them is going to explode this round. So we'll come back to that when we see the scores. Then Payne Haas, captaincy, rule number 1. Is this, and I'm asking the wrong person here because you are so like Jay-Z ball counterculture. There's a reason you're a KFC king. You're against the crowd. The crowd's going Haas captain. Are you going with the crowd here?
I don't think so. I
Oh,
look.
there it is.
I
There it
love
is.
Haas. I probably should have kept him last week in hindsight, but I think Terrell May looks the better captaincy option of the two this week. They're playing the Dolphins, who have come out and just played awful for 3 weeks straight,
Mm,
and so while that does look really good for when Haas is on the field, the temptation to rest him a bit is gonna be there. Like he might only play 50 minutes this week, and while he's shown that he can score 80 points in 50 minutes, you almost have to play, I guess, the numbers. Um, can he keep up this ridiculous PPM? Look, if anyone can, it's Payne Haas. But
mm,
Terrell May, you're going to get 65 minutes. He hasn't scored a try yet. He doesn't have too many attacking stats, which he's definitely capable of.
mhm.
And he's playing a Warriors side who really like playing up the middle. So the base is going to be there. It could be a real tight contest as well. And if he somehow plays more minutes than the 65 he's getting, then I think he's in for almost 100 himself this week, or maybe not as much as Payne Haas unless he grabs a try. But
Mm.
like, can Haas really keep these numbers up? I would lean towards it's got to come down at some point.
Yeah, so Terrell May, I had a few glimpses last week where he almost went through and was close to the line, and we saw how good Coruscant was last week. That was what I was watching for, right? Is Coruscant going to be back to his best? Because round 2 he came back, he wasn't that exciting. Round 3 he was so dynamic. So as soon as his running game becomes a threat, teams start to sort of jam in on him, and Terrell May, those lanes open up for him. So I'm with you. I went Terrell May last week. Right now it's sitting on Terrell May for me. It's Monday. Last week I changed my captain half an hour before kickoff. So what we say now doesn't really mean that much, but it's sitting on Terrell May today. I'll just throw in a few numbers here too. So Payne Haas averages across this year. No attacking stats in this, right? 31 tackles, 7.3 tackle busts, 5.3 offloads, 181 meters run. That's really his work rate through the middle. That's 83 points right there. He's not a guy who misses tackles. He's not a guy who makes errors. That's 83 in just him rocking up and being destructive through the middle without the big upside. Now, you could make a case that offloads and tackle breaks are a bit of upside, but that being 83 is just so jarring because most players, like I do a top 5 every week for zero tackle, and 83 would sit in the top 5 every week,
Yeah,
right? Like it's just so huge.
he looks really, really sharp as well. One thing I
Mm,
noticed about that Cowboys game is I don't think I've ever seen a bloke as big as him move as quick as he can. And I don't know if he's ever been that fast in previous seasons, or it might be just him,
mm,
being a year older and a bit bigger and a bit stronger and a bit faster, which tends to happen, especially since he's coming into his prime as a footballer. So, I mean, look, he'd be a brave man to back against Payne Haas, but I think I'm just going to go for like Terrell May almost scores his 70 in base every week. It's
mm,
kind of impressive. Like he's almost scored the exact same 3 weeks in a row in the same minutes,
mm.
almost ran for the same meters, almost made the same tackles every week. Um, yeah, I don't know. I need to make a bit of a move, and I think May over Haas might be that move.
If not for Haas this year, we would be marveling over Terrell May. Like we would be because he's bumping out a 70 plus average. Like we would be absolutely marveling. We would just be totally shocked by it. So yeah, no, Payne Haas he's unbeatable right now though. This run of matchups too. So speaking more broadly across the next month, Dolphins, Tigers, Roosters, Warriors, Bulldogs, Panthers. I mean, they're all probably take Penrith out of it. But if you look at the rest of that, it's some pretty exploitable matchups there. I mean, the Warriors are pretty tough through the middle, but the Dogs, for example, like they won that game, but they weren't super strong through the middle. They're a bit undersized there. Like Tigers, they don't have heaps of depth in the middle. The Roosters, they're getting some guys back, but they've been fragile as well. Like I don't know. I mean, if you sort of committed to captaining Haas over the next month, you'd probably get a couple more 100+ scores. When we sat down last week, we did talk about this. Like he's going to score 2 tries in the next 5 weeks. He'll have a couple of 100+ scores. There was one of them. We should have listened to ourselves. But he's probably going to have a couple more. So even if you do cop that lower score, which looks like a 55 or 60, if he then does the 100 the following week, then you've got the sort of average across those two of 80 points. So I think on balance probabilities, if we're just giving advice, Haas captain makes the most sense. It's the one to do. But if you want to be crazy and take an anti-pod, it can work. Like, it can work. We saw Cleary last week. Haas might have a game where he gets a big rest or, something else happens. So, yep, Haas captain is the logical choice. But if you're crazy, try something else. Rolling through to the last section here, and this is a big one because this affects a lot of teams. So most people are looking at their team and they're thinking, you know what, this is pretty good. I don't want to use any trades, but I don't want to miss out on player A, B, C, D, E, right? So the big question here is, do you persist with some of these mid-rangers or some of these guys who maybe are missing a week or whatever it is there? So to cover here, we've got Tom Gilbert, Alex Seyfarth, Isaiah Iongi, Luke Metcalf, Connor Watson, and Cam Munster. I'll throw you first here, Jay-Z. Are there any of these guys here that really stand out to you as a guy that you're very willing to sell or a guy that you'd be really keen on holding on to?
Yeah, so I would say Tom Gilbert and Isaiah Iongi are probably the two that I wouldn't hate moving on quicker rather than later. Yongi's just sort of shown that he's not a big fantasy point scorer. We've seen with his New South Wales Cup production as well, when his side is playing well and he gets a try or two, he can score 60 plus, but Parramatta are just playing so badly. He's not getting the attacking opportunities. And I think it's more likely he scores under 30 than over 30 at this point. Whereas Tom Gilbert, he's sort of that like plotter in the middle. And after his 65 in round one, people were chasing him. But now I'm thinking, look, if I have to sell one of these mid rangers early, it'll be him because I mean his break even is now 35. It's catching up to what we can probably expect him to average. I actually kind of think we'll be looking more at low 40s from Gilbert than high 40s to 50s. He played 80 minutes on the weekend, but he played a lot of it on the edge. And when you play on the edge, you're asked to make tougher tackles. They're not really sort of up and down tackles. So you're more prone to misses, and he's just not a damaging ball runner. Like he's not throwing a lot of offloads. He's not breaking a lot of tackles. He's had one tackle break in 3 games, one offload in 3 games. Hasn't run for 100 meters in any of the games. So I'd be a bit more tempted to get off him first, give him one more week, see how that goes. If he can manage another like 50 plus, I'd probably be more inclined to hold him, but it's not really that exciting watching him at the moment.
I agree with saying, I started the year with Gilbert and sort of said to people, like, it's a bit too late to go buy him. It was generally my advice. He historically was that 47.5 points in 58 minutes. So it's kind of what I forecast for him this year, maybe a slight uptick because he's a bit older. He was made captain, though. That's the one bit that sort of makes me a bit more sold on him because right now he's priced at a 42. I still kind of have him. I mean, if he's starting at lock, right, it's an assumption. I still have him penciled in for that sort of higher 40s number. And I don't know. He's a hard one to read with the Dolphins because Max Plath is also a better lock than he is an edge-back rower. And until he was named captain, he wasn't in my side at all. But him being named captain, because before that I was thinking, you know what, their best team doesn't actually have him starting unless he's prop. Because Max Plath is a better middle. And I would say, and this is probably a bit controversial, but Fidafuyaki and maybe Lemuelu, I think on the edges that adds a bit more strike to their team as well. So unless Gilbert's one of your props, he's probably moved back to the bench. But because he's captain, he's going to be starting somewhere. I lean towards him as a hold, especially with the chaos we have too. Like his dual position gives you a bit of flexibility with your trades. Like, I think that's underrated a bit in terms of sort of who we look to sell. I think Alex Seyfarth is a great example of that too. You know, people were looking at selling him last week, and we've talked about him a bunch. He's not a genuine superstar footballer, not the captain of the team, anything like that, but came out and sort of scored averagely, then grabbed that try and pumped out a 50 plus. And he's just going to make cash. And last week he was 467K. It was cheap enough, dual position. He's doing his job. I think you got to leave those guys in because we really don't have a plethora of cheapies who are coming out and pumping big scores, especially in the forward rotation. So I personally think these guys are pretty valuable just as sort of squad rounders. But then you jump across to someone like Luke Metcalf. I think that's a more interesting conversation because part of his upside is the running game. And we saw a sub 20 meter running game from him last week. I think it was 9 meters total. So, I've got to be transparent. I was at a Bucks party this weekend. So I've caught some KO minis, but I don't really know what happened with Luke Metcalf. Can you get your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, well, the thing that a lot of people with guys like this, so guys that are traditionally sort of running halves, they don't do a lot of kicking. They're not used to sort of leading the side around the park. A lot of people assume that they're going to maintain the running game that they had as a 6. When you're just a genuine 5'8", then you're going to be running a lot. You're probably not setting up guys out the back. You don't need to be as switched on and in tune with the game. You just sort of take the opportunities when they present themselves. And what we're seeing with more Metcalf, but I actually think it might affect Jaden Campbell to a certain extent as well, is that their focus is on leading the side around, organising everyone, putting kicks in the right areas, making sure blokes are standing where they should be standing, and it's really affected his attacking output. Now, he sort of had that ceiling game against Manly where he came out, he scored a try, 2 try assists, but when that's not happening, yes, his base stat with the kick meters are way higher, but he's actually lost a lot of the running meters that he traditionally would have as just a pure 6, and he's not trusting his natural game, right? He's not taking the line on as much, so there'll be less tries, less tackle breaks, probably less offloads as a result as well. So, and he's got a couple of tough matchups coming up. So I don't hate the idea of selling him. I almost bought him last week. Well, I didn't almost buy him, but I thought about maybe buying him
Same
last
here,
week.
man. I thought about it. Yeah. Just looked at the numbers; they weren't that hot.
Yeah, I think it's just if you don't have him, avoid him and think about selling him. Obviously, he's got the Tigers this weekend, which is a pretty good matchup. So maybe at least give him one more round. But I think when the Warriors buy comes around, there should be a serious consideration for selling him to someone like maybe a Kidione Katoga or something, like a new upcoming cash cow.
Yeah, I'm with you. It frees up a bunch of cash. And if you get a Kautoga, right, and he comes back in, he had the HIA last week, but he could probably score a similar average to someone like Metcalf. We're so flush with halves as well. I'm with you there. I will say with Campbell, it was interesting because with Campbell, I think we're seeing a bit of a good trajectory though. So we saw him come out in that first game and he was doing none of the attacking play at all, like just pure playing 7, sitting behind the ruck, sort of kicking the ball. They made a few line breaks, and I noticed he let other people jump into first receiver, which was a real concern sign for me. But in the last 20 minutes of that game against the Dogs, we saw him sort of wake up and start to go back to what he was doing well last year. And then last week against the Knights, they walked all over the Knights, right? Knights are a bit under strength, but that was a bit more what I expected from him. And look, the try, you can't count on a try every week, but the base stats were there. 70 run meters is not his numbers from last year, but it's good. And I think they saw success from that. So I think someone like Campbell, you're seeing that positive trajectory. Whereas with someone like Metcalf, it's kind of bouncing around a bit. And like you said, that ceiling game with the 2 try assists, only 64 points. Not enough to make up for these sorts of games. If he was pumping out an 80 in that sort of game, you'd be like, okay, yeah, I can cop that. It's just like a wing fullback scoring profile, but he's not going that high. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think I'd lean towards a bit of a sell. Isaiah Iongi and Metcalf are the two that I'd lean to selling, and Gilbert are safe out the holds for me. Connor Watson's another one, and we're both not Connor Watson owners, so never wish for an injury, but 27 points was good to see in some opponents' teams. Pretty easy. I know hold is sort of my first answer, but I think, you know what? He's priced up there. Like he's priced up in that mid-50s. He's basically full price for what he's going to be. I'd still say hold. I think he offers a nice dual position play there, and he'll score fine when he comes back. I've heard that they're contesting the HIA. I don't know if they're actually going to do it, but that would mean he's definitely a hold. But regardless, I still think you're holding Connor Watson, unless it's the only way you can get to Payne Haas or something crazy like that. But for 95% of teams, he's a hold to me.
Yeah, even if you were chasing Payne Haas, I don't think I'd sell him this week. He's kind of in the same boat as Cleary, where he's a real elite point scorer in his position. Like, who's you're going to play Peter Mamazelos as your main hooker for every week? And
Mate,
he's had a couple of good games. Don't get me wrong.
80 minutes.
It's crazy. I was thinking about like maybe might have to move Pete on early in the season after round 1, but glad to see he's bounced back. But I just, Harry Grant's not doing too crash hot at the moment, so there's no real, unless you have Tom Starling, I think.
Even his
then maybe you could
falling
consider
off,
it.
You saw him; he got ran over last week and then got less minutes. So, and he's not their future hooker. They're going for Brayley and they're building up Paddy. Paddy was great, by the way. Like I think it was 37 points in 27 minutes. That could be.
Yeah, he looks good, Paddy. Yeah, I just don't see the point in selling Watson. Like he's just going to come back and be a 60 plus point scorer regardless. Like he scored 90 the week before. Anyone that can score 90 points and sort of in base has 50 plus is probably just worth holding.
Yeah, that game too. He went off 39 minutes in. He had 30 tackles already. He was rolling. He was absolutely rolling with no attacking upside whatsoever. So yeah, I'm with you there. And then Cam Munster. This is an interesting one because he was pretty good in that game against the Panthers. Like he had 3 try assists. They were all very low point try assists. Like they were kicks and other plays like that. But he looked fine, and he looked fine in round 1 as well. I'm sitting on Cam Munster right now, and I don't know, this Jerome Hughes news is going to play into it. Like if Hughes is out, he's definitely a hold. But even with Hughes sort of back, I'm still thinking I'm just going to ride this wave. I think he's going to have some nuclear games. He'll bounce up. I'll be patient. And if there's going to be a couple of low games in there, that's okay because law of averages, it'll balance out. If you were on Cam Munster, would you be holding on or moving him on?
Yeah, I still have him, and I think the signs are there for him. Like he's had 5 try assists in 2 games, and while that hasn't necessarily contributed to great fantasy scores just yet, um, he looks really good on the ball. He looks a lot fitter than he was last year, and he's a guy that usually has a lot of tackle busts, and he had 0 against Penrith. And let me tell you, the Melbourne Storm and Cameron Munster are not going to have 0 tackle busts in a game very often. He is another guy that has potential to score 90 plus. And with Hughes out, you can probably expect him to take a bigger role on the side. They're already trusting him in putting these like short kicks on, like 3 try assists, all from the boot, all 5-point try assists. But it's nice having a guy that can do that can create points. And like I said, he's going to have bigger running games moving forward. He's not going to miss 5 tackles every week. A lot of negative points this week. I think the upside with him is massive. And it's just be a bit patient. And I think I'm hoping it's the same with Harry Grant as well. But Melbourne will get better.
Yeah, eye test perspective too. Like if you think about general footy, if he's sort of setting up all these other guys, like with kicks, with passes, teams are probably going to stop sort of marking up on his mark. They're going to slide out a bit. They're going to look for that kind of thing. That's when then the running game opens up. Because Cam Munster, like we can talk about fantasy and stats all we want, but he's a player who's one of the best players in the comp. And whatever option is the best for the attacking play he's running, he's going to take it. So once teams start giving him the run, he'll start taking the run. But he's not going to force the run if he doesn't have it. So I'm with you there. I think teams will adjust and we'll start to see that running game come out. And you mentioned the fixtures before, especially if Hughes is out. The attack's going to have to run through him and Pappenhausen. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't hate having both of them in my team. So, yeah, with you there for the upside. You got to hold on to him. Is there anyone else in this section that you want to talk about, like in terms of persisting with mid-ranger? Because you mentioned Harry Grant. I'm kind of at my wit's end, and if Hughes is playing this week, like it was 6 run meters and 6 missed tackles last week, which just killed me.
It's crazy. That's not very Harry Grant-esque, is it? He's such a dangerous ball runner. Look, I think Hughes is almost definitely out, right? So, I mean, wait and see. I can't really justify trading someone like Grant. Like he's almost always averaged at least sort of towards the mid 50s, and he has a sort of career history of almost 60 at hooker.
I think 5 years, 55 to 62 is the range. Yeah.
And while he's clearly sort of not running as much as he has in the past, that will come. And I think once Melbourne get better and better, and once they sort of, now that Nelson and Stefano are playing together, he's going to get a lot more quick play the balls. Penrith are one of the best sides in the comp at limiting that. And it may have just been a result of him not having a lot of opportunity to get out of dummy half and take a quick dart, but that'll come. Again, St. George this week, their middles aren't crash hot. Hopefully that gets better for him. The only other guy I can think of is maybe John Bateman. God, he had a bad game against the Broncos on the weekend. I'd lean towards hopping off him. He's just missing too many tackles.
Yep. Yeah, 2 sub-40 scores in a row, 80 minutes. Like the form's not there. Rob Toya, I'll mention as well. If you have asked about selling him, do not sell Rob Toya. is the firm answer there. He scored 24 last week. It was over 100 meters run. 20 tackles, had a few tackle breaks. I think it was 3 errors and 3 missed tackles, so a few negatives there, but just no attacking plays. I'm good with it. He's mid 300s. Like he's our rookie center. As long as he keeps the spot.
I was going to say, what do you do if Billy Smith comes in this week for Rob Toya?
Oh, I mean, it's pretty hard to keep him at that point, isn't it? I'd probably give him 1 week. Still, I'd probably try to give him 1 week, pending having enough players this week. Because I'm on Hubner. I've got Cleary. I've still got Duffy in my team as well. So because I had Lucas and Hosking last week, right? So I had to move them to go get Payne Haas. So I'm looking okay right now, but if there were like 3 or 4 curveballs, I'd have to, really look at selling him. In general, though, I'd give him a week because there's enough in that back line. Like Billy Smith has been injured quite a bit over the years. Dan Tupou's an older guy. Dom Young, he has a hamstring injury every now and then. Not that you're rooting for it, but there's enough guys there that could drop out, and Noani Tuase could move to the wing. Like Toya's that first drop for both those spots, the center spots and the wing spots. So I'd give him 1 or 2 weeks just because of the upside he's displayed so far. But are you in the same camp or?
Yeah, I think you kind of have to be. Like you said, it's probably. I don't know. He played really badly against the Warriors. I could see him getting dropped this week. And Robinson in his post match talked more about Marky Mark and Tupou staying together and keeping their combinations. There were a couple of really nice moments from him on the weekend where he almost turned it into points, but not much was said about Rob Toya, and he dropped the ball a lot and he missed a couple tackles. And look, I'm worried. I'm officially worried about him, but I don't know that I'd be rushing to trade him even if he gets dropped.
That's rough. I've got him in a few draft leagues. I was feeling like a genius, and then if this happens, I'll have to go get Billy Smith. But yeah, okay, keep an eye on it. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else that we want to nail down here. I mean, I'll just quickly touch on this. Kautoga, named a start this week, let's say. Must have?
Must have is a strong term. I don't think he's a must have. I think there's a lot of trap about him.
Yeah.
Especially if Parramatta come out and get belted again.
Yep.
But he is really tempting. He's playing Manly this week though, and God, Manly loves hammering the edges.
Yeah. He had like no run meters until like the 50th minute in that game too. Like as a Para fan, I don't think he's sparklingly passed the eye test so far. Like it's not like I'm looking at him going like he's the solution at the edge back row spot. I personally would still run. I know Madison doesn't play there anymore. I'd still put Madison there over Kautoga. I'd still bring Cartwright back. Like that's so. I find it quite hard to buy guys where they're not in my best 17 for a team. But they trained all preseason that with him in that spot. So I think
it sounds like they trained all preseason with Kelma Tuolangi as well, and it took him about 12 minutes to axe him.
Valid, but that's Kelma. He's an easy one. And I'll just a couple of quick ones here. Tamale, easy hold.
Yep, as long as he holds his spot.
All right, and Jack Cole, without Cleary, are you confident with him in your 17?
No, I actually think they'll bring in Brad Schneider. I think they'll bring in a genuine 7 next to him, and I actually think he might be at risk for losing his spot to Talangi this week. I thought Blaze looked really good in the minutes he got on the weekend. And Cole looked okay.
That would be a disaster if Rob Toya, Jack Cole both get dropped as well. Oh, there's going to be some teams running 15 players this week.
And Tamale, mate.
Oh, don't say Tamale. There's no way Tamale can go. I need to believe in Tamale.
Who knows? They might turn around and we might see Jaden Sullivan named at halfback for the Rabbitohs. Humphreys played a bit of lock.
Just stop it. Stop it.
Yongi, Joash Papali'i in for Yongi this week, maybe. There's a lot of up in the air, I think.
It's going to be a beefy teamless Tuesday. Well, at least I know with Tom Gilbert and Gus Crichton, my edge back rowers, they'll stay in the team, hopefully.
Knock on wood, mate.
All right, mate. Well, big questions. Thanks for jumping on, Jordan. KFC King in here. Just a reminder, guys, Jay-Z was 4th place last year, so you got to listen to him. He knows what he's talking about.